Hello, this is Kelly Webb, and I will be walking you through the Hogan Personality Test, how to review the assessment results, and how Synacor uses this assessment in development and training. We're going to start with the Hogan Personality Inventory. So this is the first result that you receive, and on the front it will say Interpret, and then in the middle it will say Hogan Personality Inventory. The other results look just like this on the first page, only it says Hogan Development Survey. So take just a minute and find the portion that says Hogan Personality Inventory. Once you found the Hogan Personality Inventory, we're going to scroll through to page 4, and we're going to review the first scale. So the Hogan Personality Inventory, this scale just has certain personality traits, and the scale tells you where you score for that specific trait. For this scale, there is no good or bad. They're either low or you're high, or your graph ends right in the middle where it says average. But just because you're low on one trait or high on another, that's neither good nor bad. So if you're low, like I am in adjustment, that is my score for that trait. If I were to score in the middle, say 50% in the average range, then all that means is I can communicate and work with people on both ends of this scale, if they were a high adjustment or a low adjustment, because I'm right in the middle. So this scale really has more to do about how you work together with other team members, how you communicate with other individuals, versus if something is good or bad for you. It's not good or bad, it's just you and how you are. So we'll roll through these different traits very briefly, and I'll just give you some examples for how I've scored in these areas. So for adjustment, I scored an 8, which is a low score. So for adjustment, that really is how you adapt to change, how you may handle stress. For me, I score an 8, which means if there's a big change, or maybe it's a change that I didn't initiate, that tends to put me under stress. And so for someone who maybe scored high, let's say an 80 or 90%, when a change comes about with them, whether they initiate it or not, it could be that they just are steady as you go. You can't even tell that there's even been a change. And so people on opposite ends of all these scales tend to have more difficulty communicating. Again, it's not that one is better or worse than the other. It's just their style, their personality, and how they interact together. So again, the scale is about teamwork, interacting, and communicating together. So for me, for a low adjustment, if there's a big change coming, I'm going to want to start working on it and start planning for it. And I may view the person at the high end of the scale who seems to have almost no reaction to it as, well, they just don't care, or they may not be as focused on this as I am. So it's helpful when you know what other people's scores are on your team, because then you have an understanding of, no, it's not that they don't care about this issue, it's just that I am low adjustment, they're high adjustment, so we're going to react to things differently. And that's where it helps to have those people that have those scores right in the middle, because they tend to communicate with people on either side very well. So they might be kind of the glue that holds people together on some of these traits. Ambition is exactly what you think it might be. High scores tend to be more competitive. Low scores tend to be maybe more quiet, maybe less assertive in driving things forward. And again, for somebody who is right in the middle, they're going to tend to work well with people with both ends of the ambition. So someone who has a very high ambition working with someone very low ambition, again, you're going to need to look at how these people interact, because someone who's very high in ambition, 80-90%, might tend to seem overbearing to people who have lower ambition, who may be more quiet or reserved when it comes to getting things done. They just quietly get it done. And so again, it's about how you communicate and how you interact with each other as a team. Sociability, this tends to be about whether or not people are either outgoing or like to work with other people. I'm high in this area, so I really like to work with other people. That's why I'm in HR. I tend to be more outgoing, more impulsive. People who are low on the score doesn't mean that they don't like people. It's just that they tend to be more reserved and tend to enjoy working alone. And then people in the middle can enjoy both ends of the spectrum. They can work alone or not work alone, and work with a group, and they're fine either way. Interpersonal sensitivity. This has to do with how direct you are with your communication with other people. High scores tend to be very warm and sociable. Low scores tend to be much more independent, much more direct. And again, someone who scores in the middle tends to work well with people on both ends of that spectrum. I like to say that I am a very direct communicator. I'm on the lower end of average. So I like to be very direct, get to the point. I think that has to do mixed with the ambition, and get things done. But on the flip side, I really like working with people, so that helps me rein in that being so direct and being so frank with people all the time, because I really want to work with a lot of people, so I can't always be direct, so that helps me rein that in. So you can see how some of these traits they aren't just in a vacuum. They can interact with each other, and play off of each other to help tone one trait down or another. Prudence has to do with how people follow rules, how organized they are, or how creative they are. So someone who is lower in prudence, such as I am, I tend to be a little bit more impulsive and flexible. I can go along with rules, but I also prefer to be more spontaneous. People who are high in prudence tend to be very organized, very dependable, very thorough. People on the lower end may be more creative, and then people in the middle tend to work well with people on both sides. So if you have someone who's really low prudence, let's say 10 or lower, who's maybe working with someone who is very high prudence, they're probably going to drive each other a little crazy. Again, you need both sides of prudence on your team. You need the creative, the spontaneous, just as you need the organized with the follow-through in order to make everything work. But just understand that someone's creativity and spontaneity may drive someone who has that high drive for organization and follow-through. They may drive each other a little crazy. Inquisitive, again, on the high end of this, people who have high inquisitive tend to be more imaginative, and they may get easily bored. Sometimes if they get under stress, and we'll look at this in just a minute, they may not pay as much attention to detail because they are just kind of driving and coming up with the next idea. People who are lower inquisitive, it doesn't mean that they're not curious, it just means that they're much more practical and down to earth, and they're willing to really drive through tasks that people who are high inquisitive may think are boring. But they really get in and get their arms around that and really just get those tasks done. So again, you need both ends of the spectrum on your teams. You need people who are willing to dig in and get those tasks done, and then you need people who are also creative and inventive, and are willing to put themselves out there and come up with some of those new ideas. And then last but not least is a learning approach. A low learning approach doesn't mean that you don't like learning. It means that you might not appreciate or like the standard kind of classroom method, formal learning methods. So you tend to want to do more of the hands-on and get it done. For me, being high learning approach, I enjoy training for the sake of training. Like if I go to a training, I not only want the outcome, I not only want the information, but I enjoy the learning aspect of it. I enjoy thinking about how they did this training section or this role play, and thinking about the whole learning approach, not just the outcome. For other individuals who are maybe on the low end, they're more concerned about the outcome. Okay, I've got to sit through this training, but I know this is going to benefit me because I'll be able to take XYZ back and help improve my job. And then people who are right in the middle, They enjoy the more formal education or learning, but they're also, they want to get out and get it done as well. So again, none of these things are inherently good or bad. It's just the personality traits under normal amounts of work and stress and communication and teamwork. And so being aware of where your team members are on these scales, especially if you're in a low or high area and the other person may be opposite, these are things to look at. And this is why we use the Hogan for team building and communication and professional development. So you will see on the next few pages following the scale, I'm going to go into adjustment. So you'll see as you look in the pages behind the yellow scale that there are sample questions. So you answer a lot of questions when you took the Hogan. And these are all self-rated by you. You got to say how you handle certain situations, and this is how the results came out based on your self-identification. So for me, I can be very introspective. I can put unnecessary pressure or stress on myself, and when change comes about, it may put me into stress more quickly than it would someone who is high adjustment. Like I said earlier, I may not even understand why they're sitting over there not paying attention or not focused to this item. I may see that as a lack of concern on their part, when it's not. It's just a different personality trait. And so you can see some of the questions that are asked to roll up to this overall score. They look at empathy, whether or not there is anxiety or guilt or calmness. Some of these subscales roll up into adjustment, and that's how they determine your overall adjustment scale. So as you go through each of these scales, you'll see how some of the individual questions were scored and how those traits roll up into the overall personality trait. Okay, so now we are going to move over to the Hogan Development Series.